I'd now just like to introduce you briefly to our two session leads, Margaret Mackay and Claire Guthrie. Margaret Mackay is a subject specialist in accessibility and inclusion and works with JISC. Claire Guthrie is our senior lecturer in learning support and works with the City of Glasgow College. I'd now just like to hand you over into the very capable hands of our first session lead, Claire Guthrie, who will now begin our webinar session with a presentation.
Welcome everyone to this first online meeting for the Assistive Technology Network. It's really exciting to be here today. This is our first webinar for the network, and it's really great to connect with you all in this way. So we're here today to explore alternative ways to access alternative formats. I'd like to thank Margaret Mackay for organising this webinar. There's been help from others, of course, but Margaret's really been instrumental in bringing us together today. Before we hear from today's presenters, I'd like to just say a few words about the Assistive Technology Network. There's been an explosion in recent years of new technologies, as I'm sure you've noticed. The solutions on offer to us as providers of education have multiplied. So in this new landscape, we saw an opportunity for a network such as this to offer and share and support and guidance on all questions AT or assistive technology related. A place where questions could be asked and answers found. Things like, would I be better using an iPad to support this learner? How might this student access diagrams digitally? The AT network is a collaborative project between the City of Glasgow College, JISC, and the College Development Network. Of course, it wouldn't work without participants. It's a relatively newly formed group. We've been active for over a year now, and we now have 240 members, largely across the UK. So members hail from a wide range of disciplines with an FE and HE and share the common interest in assistive technology. We communicate through JISC mail and are looking to develop our presence and impact in all things AT related through face-to-face meetings, webinars such as this, as well as WordPress blog and having a Twitter presence. If you haven't already signed up to the network, and I know many of you have, I'll give details on how you might do this at the end of today's session. But now I'd like to hand you over to Margaret Mackay, who will take us from here.
Thank you very much, Claire. Accessing material in alternative formats can sometimes be an expensive and often a lengthy process. And as part of today's online meeting, we're going to hear from some really interesting speakers who hail from a wide range of both geographical and professional areas. And our three speakers are going to share information about innovative services, about resources and initiatives that might help inspire you and explore alternative ways to access alternative formats. We're very grateful to our three speakers in anticipation of their contributions. They're going to speak for 10 minutes each. And when they have spoken, I'd like to offer maybe 5 minutes for you to ask any questions, and we'd invite you to ask questions in the chat pane. So if you have any questions, please do feel free to add them into the chat pane, and we'll pose them to each speaker at the end of their presentation. So it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce our very first guest, who I know has had a busy day and a very busy morning, Jenny Short. Jenny Short is the RNIB Reading Service Product Manager. And Jenny today is going to introduce the RNIB Bookshare project, which was formerly known as Load to Learn. And this service provides support in accessing books and curriculum material in alternative formats for students with print disabilities. So it's my very great pleasure to pass you on to Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hi there. Thank you, Margaret. Yes, so RNIB Bookshare, the change in name of the service came about in March when we changed platforms earlier this year. You will note that the URL is still loadtolearn.org, and that will hopefully be changing next month. But obviously it will redirect to the new URL name as well. So just to hopefully squish any confusion about what the service is called. So we first launched in 2012 and have been steadily growing. And we're an online web-based service providing digital curriculum materials to support print disabled learners, and that's from early years all the way through to higher education, and we do even have some lifelong learners that access materials from us as well. We are quite unique for RNIB that sort of in 2012 we became a service. We were launched as a service that supports all print disabilities, so it's not just about supporting learners with sight loss. We're there to support learners with dyslexia or other cognitive disabilities such as Asperger's, where they struggle to understand information presented to them in standard print books, and also a physical disability if they can't physically hold the book. So yeah, we're quite unique in that way for a service from RNIB that we support all print disabilities as we name it. It is a completely free service. We currently have over 16,000 titles in the collection, and as I say, they range from your early years, your primary reading schemes, through to your GCSE textbooks, through to your books that you need in university as well. And what we have is, if the book is on the site as a PDF, and quite often that's the PDF we've obtained from the publisher rather than created ourselves, that's only available to download as a PDF, but which can then be used with a range of access technology or on your iPad using the accessibility features, or perhaps you need to use it to extract the text from to create a modified large print edition. But where we managed to obtain or create an EPUB file for the book, it's downloadable as DAISY, text only, DAISY with images, where the original file had images in it, DAISY audio, MP3 audio, and as a Braille ready file. So that Braille ready file is really there to support sort of your simpler text, so it won't do your coded, such as your science, your maths, and your language and your music, but sort of straightforward English, history, geography. You will be able to get a usable Braille file downloaded. And we've got over 3,000 accessible images on the site as well. So they're in large print, which have colour in them as well. And then we have the UEB contracted and uncontracted artwork as well. So there'll be black and white diagrams, which if you have access to a heat fuse machine and the swell paper, you can then create the tactile edition of that image. Or if you don't have access to that equipment, you can contact a transcription service. And it's roughly about £1, £1.50 per page of swell paper, and that really is to cover the cost of the paper. We work with around 190 publishers at the moment, and they're imprints. So if there's a book you need to get a hold of an electronic edition of that isn't on the site yet, we operate a book request service. So you can request the book that you need, tell us the ISBN and the title, and then we will do our best to obtain a PDF or EPUB file from the publisher for you, and that's working quite smoothly. There are some publishers you need to contact directly, but all that information is on the website. So as I say, we are free to educational organisations within the UK. We charge £80 for a year's membership for schools that are overseas. At the moment, we've got just over 300 further and higher education institutions. I think it's about 215 sixth form and HE colleges, and about 105 universities that have membership with us at the moment. And what's really good is a lot of universities that are on board are also scanning in their books and uploading them, so you can share the resources that you're creating and you've got in your collections with other members of RNIB Bookshare. So really helping to reduce the time it takes to find those materials because they're already in the collection, and make it so if you want to share your resources that you're creating, we just set you up with something called volunteer status, which gives you your uploading permissions for you to start adding all your materials to the collection as well. And what I should have mentioned when I was talking about the publishers is we are setting up publisher feeds. So at the moment it's very much we request a book, they upload it, and on a one-to-one basis. But part of the reason we changed platform was it allows us to set up feeds. So the first publisher feed went live for Sage Publishing, and so now what they have kind of uploaded anything that we had missing from the collection. That's ongoing to start feeding that through, and then when they publish something new, it just automatically comes through into the collection now. So we should find a point for Sage Publishing titles that they should just all be on the site and you don't need to request them. Hodder Education are next in line along with Manchester University Press. So again, their feeds will go live soon, and all their back catalogue and any new titles they publish will just go straight onto the site live. And those 190 publishers we work with, we want all of them to be having their publisher feeds live, and get all of their collections up and running on the site and made available to everybody. And yeah, so you can contact us on our telephone number, which is 0300 303 8313, or email us at bookshare@rnib.org.uk, and the web address is currently loadtolearn.org, but I say that will change in November. And also on the site we have just launched our iPads for Education service, and that is offering subsidised iPads to learners with sight loss. So it could be the institution that take out the contract, it could be the learner themselves if they're over 18, or it could be the learner's family. So do take a look on our Help Centre page on the website for further information about that if you've got any learners that would benefit from having an iPad at a subsidised rate. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I know that we have a couple of minutes now for questions and answers, and if anybody has a question I would invite you to ask in the chat pane. Jenny, I'd just like to maybe kick off by asking you a wee question. You mentioned some publishers, Sage, Hodder, Manchester University Press. Is it right to say then that if these publishers have produced an accessible version of a particular publication, that they would automatically then share it with Load to Learn to be accessed by the education sector? Is that how this distribution of accessible formats would work, Jenny?
Yeah, so the publisher will either give us their PDF or their EPUB file, depending on what they have available. Some, for example, Sage often have both available, so they will give us both the PDF and the EPUB file, which then can be downloaded in a range of formats. So some are agreeing to give us their back catalogues, so Sage and Hodder. I think Manchester University Press are giving us almost 800 titles from their collection. And the idea is that we get them in bulk in this new system, so the request of either having to go to the publisher directly through it or having to request it through us on an individual basis diminishes, because the collections will just be in there. Obviously there might be occasions where for their own sort of copyright agreements they might not be able to give us particular files, but where possible they are providing them to us, yes.
Excellent, thank you very much. I know that Andrea asked a question about what UEB was, and Alistair very kindly clarified Unified English Braille, so thank you, Alistair, for doing that. We had a question from Andrew, who sort of talked, he asked about you mentioned books for Asperger's syndrome, which technically doesn't exist under the new, I suppose, diagnostic definitions, and what he's asking is, would you support the new label autism? So it's about definition, I think Andrew's asking about, Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, we say that it's available to those with autism as well. I'm just trying to find the actual legal definition. It all comes under the Copyright and Rights in Performance is Disability Regulations, which came about in 2014. And it's individuals and, it's anyone who has an impairment that prevents them from accessing copyright works will be able to benefit from the exception, not just the visually impaired. So whilst we're keen not to divert too much from the wording of the Act, because we are not, you know, copyright lawyers or legal people, it is very much about being available to the service available to those supporting learners and those learners that have an impairment that prevents them from accessing the standard edition of the work.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jenny. And just a question again about contributions, you know, people and organisations adding to the Load to Learn repository, if you like, as well as publishers contributing to the repository of accessible resources that you have. If institutions, if a college or university has created an accessible version, is that something that Load to Learn would be able to, I guess, accept a version of to be shared with others? How does that work?
Yeah, so from our very outset of when we first launched the service in 2012, it was very much about being a community and sharing your resources. Not just about us contacting publishers and getting their collections, because what we know is there are institutions all around the country all producing the same work or struggling to find the work that they need. So it's very much about sharing those work, saving time, you know, for somebody in the next school or university down the road, and building up a really good collection of materials for everybody to use.
So Jenny, it's the kind of crowdsourcing as well of accessible content. And I'd just like to endorse what Alistair, my colleague Alistair, said, that we do, we really do encourage people to contribute to this collection, because there is that thing about the quality and the quantity and the sharing of facilities and resources that people have developed to make sure that more learners have access to accessible content. Jenny, can I just finish off by saying thank you so much for your time. I know that you've had a very busy morning, and so we're very grateful to you. Certainly through the network we will share the message about RNIB Bookshare Load to Learn, and I know that my colleagues at the College Development Network will do so as well. So thank you very much indeed. I'd like to move on now to I'd like to move on now to our next presenters. And again, it's my very great pleasure to introduce Lars Value Christensen and Tanya Stevens, both from SensusAccess. Between them, Lars and Tanya have many years' experience in designing and supporting users' access to innovative enabling technologies, including SensusAccess and also the RoboBraille service. Both Lars and Tanya have extensive expertise in supporting the inclusion of people with disabilities, working with government, academic and disability organisations across the world. Again, I'd like to invite you to post any questions in the text chat, and we'll ask them to Lars and Tanya at the end. So Lars and Tanya, I'm going to pass on to you, and looking forward to hearing your information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mag, and thanks to everybody for listening to us today. We're going to try to be very fast. And as introduced, Lars is here as well, and he's going to take you to some of the top points in using the SensusAccess service. So I would like to also welcome you to take any contact to us while we've been finishing the presentation, because we would love to come and do a real demonstration for you. It's usually just about an hour, so we'll just get an extract of it right now. So yeah, let's go forward to it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Basically, the SensusAccess service is a self-service solution intended for students, for faculty, for staff, for alumni. Who go to a web page, preferably on the institution's own web pages, upload their documents and decide themselves how they want the documents converted. We have 5 main workflows in the service so far. First of all, you can use the service to convert your documents into MP3 audio files. They're great because they play on so many different devices. It's a very portable format. It's a great format to take with you when you want to study, when you're commuting, when you're doing your workouts. It's a good format for repetitions and so on. The downside is that it can be very difficult to orientate and navigate inside of an MP3 file. And for that reason, we also support structured audiobooks in the main formats for that. There are really 2 different formats in play at the moment. One is the old disability format called DAISY that you may be familiar with. It's being superseded these days with a mainstream format, just a plain ebook with a media overlay on top of that produces pretty much the same functionality as you would find in the old DAISY books. In a structured audiobook, you have the text, you have the audio. Those 2 things are synchronized so we can highlight as we go along. And then in addition, you also got all the navigational aids that you need to find your way around the document. So you can navigate using a table of contents, using the heading structure, using pages, page numbers, and of course you can also put in bookmarks. And you can use the service to convert your documents into either of these 2 structured audiobook formats. Then in the third workflow, you can use the service to convert documents into the main ebook formats that are in play at the moment. We really like the reflowable ebook formats because they allow you to scale up the text, to substitute the fonts, to change the colors, the color combinations, the line spacing, and so on. And we found that that those things really make ebooks very good for people with low vision, especially people with specific eye conditions and special needs for color combinations, special color combinations. So it's a way of producing what we consider digital large print. We've also found that the ability to substitute fonts actually make ebooks very good for people with dyslexia who may find some fonts more easy to read than others on an individual basis. In the fourth workflow, you can use the service to convert your documents into digital braille books that can then subsequently be embossed on a braille embosser, shown on a braille display, or loaded onto a braille note taker. And in the last workflow, you can use the service to convert your inaccessible or tricky documents into something that is more accessible or less tricky to use. So this is where you can convert your image-only PDF documents into Word files, into text documents, or of course all the way into MP3 audio files. You can also, if you have students who are using their smartphones to take pictures of text, you can then have the students upload their JPEG pictures of these texts to the service to convert them into something that they may find more useful. A tricky document could be a PowerPoint presentation that many blind users find extremely difficult to use. So to accommodate screen reader users, we have a number of conversion options available to convert PowerPoints into something that may be more useful or easier to work with. Some of these functions are language aware, like the audio functions and the braille functions, and we do have quite a lot of language support inside the service. So you'll find support for all the main European languages, also some of the smaller European languages, support for some Asian languages like the 3 Chinese languages, for Korean, for Japanese, for American English, Latin American Spanish, for Arabic, for Russian, and a few languages beyond that. So quite a lot of language support inside of the service. What we're trying to do with the service is really to promote independence and self-sufficiency amongst those with special needs in order to do whatever we can to support inclusion in mainstream environments, that be in mainstream education, subsequently on the labor market, and of course also to contribute towards social inclusion. What we've found, academic institutions, their reasons for picking up the service is really, first and foremost, availability. It's an online service. There's no human involvement in it. That means that it's simply available whenever you need it and wherever you are. You can simply just go to the web page, upload your documents, and convert it anywhere you want, and you don't need to involve other people. Because it is automated and because you're not involving other people, that also has an impact on the privacy of the service. And just because you have special needs, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to share what you're reading with other people. Then you can use the service to provide multiple different alternate formats, and we've found that in many cases students will want different formats depending on the situation that they're in. So sometimes if they want to study when they're commuting, when they're doing their workouts, when they're doing the dishes, they may simply want an MP3 audio file, whereas in other situations when they're engaged in more in-depth studying, they may want a more sophisticated format like a structured audiobook or Braille document. Then there's a positive cost implication of using the service, apart from the Braille output where you still need quite costly equipment in order to be able to render the Braille. For all the other formats that we are producing, students and others will be able to use whatever hardware they have to read back the format. So we have identified free apps, free applications that you can install on your laptop computers, on your tablets, on your smartphones, and off you go. Then we thought a lot about the pricing structure for the service, and there were a few things that we would like to do. First of all, we would like to make sure that the service could be used as an inclusion technology, not as a disability technology, but really as an inclusion technology that should be available to everybody, irrespectively of whether you have any disabilities or not. So we really welcome users from the mainstream to use the service as well. We also would like institutions to be able to position the service as a long-term strategy where students could even use the service once they graduate, because chances are that they're going to have exactly the same disabilities when they go on into further education or they go into a job situation. And thirdly, what we wanted to do was to make sure that we did not penalize those institutions who are very good at rolling out the service and getting a good uptake and converting lots and lots of documents. So the solution we came up with is an annual flat fee for unlimited use that allows you to extend services to everybody associated with an academic institution. And then lastly, we're seeing that institutions are using the service as a way of providing accessibility support if they are engaged in distance learning, if they are running online courses, if they have blended learning environments, and so on. Our users, I said that we welcome people from the mainstream. Having said that, obviously our main users, our primary users, will be those users with special needs, those who are blind, partially sighted, have a reading impairment, a learning disorder, a cognitive disability, a concussion, a motor deficiency, anything like that that requires them to need access to material in alternate formats. And then at the other end, we have the professionals who are there to support the needs of those with special needs. So the alt media professionals, faculty members, staff members, and others who are catering for the needs of our primary users. Then we are seeing the at-risk students, people without the best reading skills, somebody who can clearly benefit from the reading support that they can get out of the service, but maybe they don't qualify into the official programs, or maybe they don't want to qualify into the official programs because they don't want to be stigmatized and branded as being somebody with a disability. They're more than welcome to use the service. And then we're seeing, in addition to that, mainstream students, mainstream faculty members using the service for a variety of different reasons. The most obvious would be students without the proper English language skills coming in from abroad, and somebody who would need reading support, at least in the beginning, until they pick up the English language. But we're also seeing students who want to experiment with different learning styles to see whether they become more efficient learners if they mix modalities. We're seeing foreign language students who are using the service to get help in reading text in a foreign language or to get the right pronunciation. We are seeing mainstream faculty members who are using the service as an easy way of converting old legacy PDF documents and so on. So lots of different users of the service. We're not trying to limit who can use it, and we're welcoming all sorts of different users. This slide is really to explain what is inside the service. We're not bringing any new technology into the equation. What we're adding to a number of well-known technologies is really a very easy-to-use interface that will guide the users through the process of submitting documents for conversion, combined with a number of automated workflows that will enable even those who are not very competent in doing that in converting into some quite sophisticated formats. What you find inside the service are text-to-speech engines, 30-some different text-to-speech synthesizers. We have our own text-to-braille converter. We're relying on open source projects for our ebook conversions. We are also using a number of open source projects for our data conversion. We're using the server version of Abby Fine Reader, a product called Abby Recognition Server, for our OCR processing. we're using Microsoft Office for opening up Word files and PowerPoints and saving them out into more useful conference. And then there are really two different interfaces to the service from a user perspective. One is based on email, that is the original user interface that we developed back when the service was intended only for our own blind pupils. That was we added a web-based interface so that when we introduced the service into higher education about 5 years ago, and then also getting information back from the service, there's also a combination of mail and web. We'll always mail back a reply to the end user, and if we are not able to return the resulting file as an attachment to that mail, we'll create an encoded link on our web page and return that. You'll be able to submit all of the expected document formats to the service: the Word file, PowerPoints, HTML and XML documents, text files, RTF documents, all sorts of different PDF documents, ranging from the image-only PDF to the text PDFs and to the fully accessible PDF documents. You can use the service to convert EPUB files to MOBI, EPUB being what most people are using, MOBI Pocket being what Amazon is using for the Kindle devices. And you can also convert EPUB documents into plain text documents or into RTF documents. And then a whole range of different image type documents can be submitted to the service. At the bottom of the slide, you can see the different languages that we do have support for, but I already covered that. And then
we're not going to
do a live demonstration in this environment, just showing you an example of the main interface to the service. This is what we customize for each of the subscribing institutions. So it uses the same colors, the same fonts, the same sizes, and you get to embed it on one or more of your own pages for students, faculties, and others to go and use. What I would like to invite you to do is to go to the main service site, the SensusAccess.com website. If you go to the Convert a File tab, you'll be able to upload your own documents to see how they work out. We provide this on a fair play basis to have a place to direct people who want to test out the service. You can also go to the resources section of the site and look at the various resources that we have collected and that can be used freely when setting up your own version of the website. And of course, all these services and resources are accessible and complies with the accessibility requirements. And I think that was pretty much it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lars and Tanya. That's a really very powerful presentation and a really great overview of the SensusAccess service. And I know that it's great because we've had some really interesting conversations in the chat pane. I know that Vicky at Leeds Beckett and Mary at Bristol University both said that they're in the process of getting it. And it's interesting because Mary at Bristol was saying that they're trying to persuade the IT department that it's a good idea. And that was a question that I think people would be interested in hearing about. Typically, institutions who have used or who are using SensusAccess, where does the responsibility for that resource lie? I mean, is it seen as a central service that's just promoted and shared as a productivity tool for all students and staff, or does it sit typically within disability services, or is it a mixture of both?
Well, I guess it's a mixture of both, and we can see that in the UK it's usually run out of the library system. So, but it's up to the individual schools how they want to position it. But most people keep it open so that everybody associated with the school can access it.
So that then becomes very much an inclusive facility available to everybody, and I suppose it's mainstreaming that resource as well. And I know that there's a number of people who have joined the webinar today who are saying that they're either using it or investigating the use of it. Some people have it on the library pages and under additional support. I know that Alistair was saying that the fantastic thing about it is it works so seamlessly on mobile phones, taking photos of text with inbuilt cameras and delivering it as an MP3 or Word file, which is great. So, I mean, I know that people might be interested in hearing more about it or really unpacking it further, and I wondered if people were interested, how could they take that further, Lars and Tanya?
if they are interested in pursuing this further, I think that the easiest thing would simply just be to drop us an email, and we'll put our email addresses now on the presentation. So you're more than welcome to drop us a line, and we'll get back to you. We travel frequently to the UK, and we'll be happy to come and visit you.
Fantastic. We've just got one final question before we move on to the next speaker. Alistair was asking about the additional benefits of this, the institutional license versus telling individuals, individual learners about the free RoboBraille or the free web service.
Well, let me put it this way. The SensusAccess service, and actually also the RoboBraille service, but the SensusAccess service has been created as a resource for universities to offer to their students. And the reason that we are keeping RoboBraille alive, or at least one of the reasons that we are doing that, is to cater for those who have nobody to cater for them. So for that reason, whenever we do new promotions, or whenever we do develop new functionalities that are sitting within the SensusAccess service, we keep feeding that back into the original RoboBraille service in order for that to stay there for those who have nobody to cater for them. But as it says both on the SensusAccess website, and it says also on the RoboBraille website, that institutional use of the service and also instructions on how to advertise students into using the service is due to that you should need to have an agreement with us. So it's not like the either or. If you are an institution or you are obliged to provide for your students, you would definitely want to have an agreement with us.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. And thank you very much to Lars and Tanya for that wonderful presentation. I'm sure you will hear from individual institutions who might want to take that further in their own organisations. Thank you. My last, but very much so not the least speaker, I'm really delighted to invite Ben Watson to speak. And Ben is an Accessible Information Advisor at the University of Kent. We're just delighted to have Ben to speak today because there's some wonderful work going on at the University of Kent. And Ben's going to talk about the developments that have taken place at the university to work inclusively and to implement accessibility initiatives in a bid to really develop a much more accessible information environment at the University of Kent. So I'm going to pass you on to the very capable hands of Ben. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm a librarian by trade, but in the last year or so I've moved across to our version of the disability unit at University of Kent to undertake a project that's looking at how we can do two things: raise broader awareness of what accessibility looks like in terms of information. So the way I often describe it to people is to say it's putting in ramps and lifts to information, much like we do to the physical environment. And then the second side of that is to say, well, if we can get those things right, then we can do more exciting things with that information and use the kind of technologies we've been speaking about to maximize the potential of that information. And again, as Lars and Tanya just said before, in a mainstream capacity. So we're very keen to try and eventually get to a position at Kent where we ideally wouldn't have to ask if someone has any kind of print disability, because our stuff can just work for them, or they have the tools to enable them to be completely self-sufficient. Okay, a lot of my presentation talks a lot about using SensusAccess and how we've embedded that into our workflow at Kent, particularly around the creation of alternative formats for that prime objective of giving students access to a tool that will enable them to be completely self-sufficient when they need to retrospectively convert material that the university has provided or that they found themselves on their research travels. The project has been run in conjunction with JISC. In particular, Alistair McNaught has been really helpful to us as a sort of co-conspirator of this whole thing, and we have a working group at Kent that's made up of a number of key people from across support teams and academic departments. It's chaired by one of our associate deans, so we felt obviously the key group we need to raise awareness amongst is academic staff, people who are primarily the sort of resource creators or the ones who create demand for resources, and we wanted to try and influence their behaviour and start to change the culture through raising their awareness of what they can do to tackle accessibility barriers upstream as far as possible. Okay, so they're the main aims that I mentioned before about building this sort of awareness of an inclusive environment and then using tools to help people maximise the value of that information. So it leads on really well, I guess, from what Lars and Tanya were talking about, but I was going to show people the way that we've used SensusAccess to kind of embed into our workflow that it means we don't necessarily have to anticipate every single demand that a student may have or requirement that a student may have, particularly where it's, you know, the weekend or 2 o'clock in the morning and they just want to be very kind of dynamic in their use of materials. So quite a common way that students will use SensusAccess is if they access our virtual learning environment and they identify perhaps a copyright licensing agency scan that sometimes some of the early ones can just be image only, so they're flat PDFs that have not been optical character recognized, and SensusAccess using the Abbey server that Lars mentioned will allow a student completely on the hoof to make a document accessible and even unlock a document's potential. So for example, it could be an image-only PDF that isn't really working for them on their screen reader that they've got from our virtual learning environment, and we use Moodle, that they can then bring across to optical character recognize it and then put it into Microsoft Word so that they can further edit it, annotate it, change font, background, or all of those things that would allow them to have full control of the document. Now, George says that I don't think I can show people the actual link as part of the presentation, but if people want to click on the link to SensusAccess on the screen that you can see, I think it should open up our page where you can see the way that we've embedded it into a University of Kent web page. Now, the reason that's helpful is that we've been able to associate our own copyright guidance with that. So apart from the fact that we have an obligation to do that as an institution using, you know, this version of RoboBraille, the institutional version of it, we get to get some really good data back from SensusAccess, so we can see the types of documents that people are submitting and the formats that they're asking for them to come back in. We get to, as I say, kind of control some of the access, or at least send people out with clear guidance on what they can and can't do with the service in terms of copyright. This is particularly important where we are trying to mainstream the use of it. So we need to be, the copyright exceptions are mainly aimed at students who have print disabilities or cannot enjoy, I think the wording of the legislation is cannot enjoy materials to the same level as someone without that disability. Therefore, our copyright officer at Kent was quite keen to make a statement there that we felt was a clear commitment to the spirit of the legislation, but didn't then lock people out from using it where it could be really beneficial to them. And we certainly didn't want to be in the business of creating a whitelist so only certain students could use it, because that would just have been a nightmare to maintain. Okay, and of course, where it's on a Kent webpage, you also get the advantage of students seeing it as a Kent service, and it's not something that they're kind of linking out to, and then they may not be sure about it, or, you know, the fact that it's on our web pages means that we can kind of treat it almost as one of our own things and link to it seamlessly from our virtual learning environment, from our library pages, that kind of thing. Okay, so it does all those things that we've seen. Probably one of the best things, and Alistair alluded to this when he was talking about mobile phone use, it's device and system neutral. It doesn't care what device you're on. So you're on an Android, you're on a iOS device, you're on a Windows laptop. It really doesn't matter. All you need is an internet connection. So in that way, it truly is very inclusive, because students can be doing this almost wherever they are, and we're quite fortunate in Canterbury that we have 3 and 4G pretty much all around the place. So it really means that they can be doing it wherever they choose to study, whether that's an internet cafe somewhere in the heart of the city, or in our library, or wherever. Okay, so we've branded the service. We've done all these things, and we've negotiated this non-restrictive copyright license, which I think is really, really important. And our copyright officer was quite brave in doing that, I think. And so far, we've not had any cause to doubt the legitimacy of the way that people are using it. And I think there is a very clear mainstream use of it where people are using it within the copyright boundaries for things like proofreading, so they can submit a half-written document that they have in a Word document perhaps, or some revision notes to an MP3, and then listen to it as they're cycling around the city. And I've done that myself on numerous occasions, and I find it's a really nice way to learn. And sometimes at the end of the day, when your eyes feel like they're about to kind of fall out of your head because you're so tired, that it's a really interesting way to still be able to do some reading, but in a way that is a bit more forgiving. Some of the other feedback we have, and I'll share some more feedback at the end that's come directly from students about their own testimonials, but because it's so easy to use and so free and so available, we find that students who would normally say, oh no, I need everything in a Word document, are kind of inspired to try some different formats out. So it could be that they're happy then to have a look at an MP3, or going to an RTF format, maybe taking their PowerPoint documents into RTF, and exploring whether there are different formats that work for them. And the fact that the students are encouraged to do that means that we don't have to necessarily anticipate across all of our web pages and virtual learning environments every single file format that every student might potentially require. We can obviously make sure that the original raw kind of file that we're giving people is accessible, but beyond that, people can then tailor it to their own requirements. So I think that's had broader use across a number of our pages, so implications for things like document delivery, as well as, things to do with the prospectus. And so it's not just a library thing. This is an accessibility benefit across the whole university. So committee papers go through SensusAccess. So, and because it does that optical character recognition, it's quite useful for older legacy documents and for scanning potentially archive material, of course, where the archive material is rendered in a way that can be OCR'd. So medieval manuscripts don't tend to do so well. Okay, and I wanted to show you an example of this, but again, Alistair mentioned that you can use it from a smartphone, and we've had quite a lot of interest and success in using or encouraging students to take photographs on their mobile phones and submit these JPEGs to SensusAccess, and then ask for it to come back as an MP3 or a Word document. So the video magnifier I was showing you there, across our library, and effectively we've had a few zones, a few workstations in the library, kind of almost broom cupboards where you would go and that's where all the kit is. But in this new kind of age, and with tools, device and system neutral tools like SensusAccess, it's kind of unlocking opportunities to say, well, if you've got a smartphone with internet connection and a decent camera on it, effectively you've got accessible scanning potential in your pocket, which means we go from having a handful of optical character recognition scanners in the library or wherever, the disability unit, to potentially having 20,000 of them across the institution. So we really are mainstreaming the opportunity to have accessible scanning, again, for everyone. If I can show you an example of that, I took a picture of a bit of text and then turned it into an MP3, and I was hoping to show both. Yeah, George, thanks, George. So I'll just play it to you now. So the photograph you can see on the screen is just a bit of blurb about the project we've been working on, and I hope you can see that it's just a photograph I've taken of a bit of A4 on the table, and then the audio I'm about to play you is the resulting MP3 file that came back.
Opera, opportunity, productivity, engagement, reducing barriers, achievement, is a university-wide accessibility project supported by advice and guidance from the Joint Information Systems Committee, JISC. The project seeks to implement a range of accessibility initiatives and monitor the impact on the development of a more accessible information environment of the University of Kent. Raising awareness of inclusive design and empowering through the innovative use of technology, the work will improve access to learning for all.
Okay, so that was a 5-second job, obviously making sure there wasn't too much camera shake and everything was reasonably good. But that kind of facility, I think, was kind of the reserve of these sort of assistive technology ghettos that we kind of used to sort of develop for ourselves in particularly in libraries. And I think the tools like SensusAccess are absolutely changing that landscape and really opening the doors to that potential. And I think that's brilliant. And you can then start thinking about people taking pictures of stuff on notice boards and really trying to render lots of information that would otherwise go beneath the radar of a lot of people more accessible, more fluidly available. Just a few bits of data to show just some stats around the kinds of materials that people are submitting. So this is you can see that PDFs appear to be the most problematic format for people, which kind of figures when you think the majority of journal articles and copyright licensing agency scans that we get from the British Library would tend to be PDFs. And then these are the outputs that people are asking back from. So you can see there's quite a range there. You can see that it is possible to go from PDF to PDF, and that would obviously be an image-only PDF to a much more accessible optical character recognized PDF. And this is just some feedback we've had from members of staff and, more importantly, I guess, from students. So the School of Arts at the University of Kent have 2 students with very significant visual impairments, and they've effectively embedded this into all of their workflows in the school. All of the academic staff know about where SensusAccess fits in their resource creation process. They've all been shown how to do it, and it's a pretty seamless thing. And what's really great to see is that we started out with staff doing the majority of kind of conversion on behalf of the students, but what's happened almost imperceptibly is that the students have grown in confidence, and in fact the staff now do almost nothing other than make sure that their PowerPoint meets basic accessibility criteria that we've described to them, and the same with Word documents and module handbooks. But now that the students are feeling empowered to do that themselves. I'm sorry, this is quite a long quote, but I thought it was quite a good one. And this student, he couldn't imagine life without it, and you can see how favourably he's talking about it. This is one of the students who's benefited in the School of Arts. So you can see here he's talking about using it to try different formats out that perhaps he hasn't experienced before. So really broadening his horizons of the sorts of documents that he may find useful in the future. So overall feedback, the software is great. And interesting, there's a forensics student there talking about making it available to the whole university. So the first year of the pilot, we were very kind of careful about that and thinking, oh, you know, are we going to be kind of creating something that would be too big for us to kind of handle if there were any kind of technical issues, but that's certainly not been something that we've experienced. I think it seems to be something that most people find quite intuitive. These are our accessibility pages where you can find that hopefully we've embedded SensusAccess kind of throughout, because it's our kind of primary way of offering students a chance to be self-sufficient if, of course, they can't. I mean, SensusAccess can't do everything. If a document's in a really horrible state to start with, it can't kind of produce magic and you know, make up for the faults of the original document. So we will, of course, always take action. We're not kind of just saying it's SensusAccess or nothing, but it's a really lovely kind of option to have, and none of us want to be gatekeepers to a student's ability to study, and we don't want them relying on us. We want them to study when they jolly well wish to study. So that's the way we've been using it. If anyone wants to find out a bit more about us at Kent and how we're doing it, or wants to, you know, collaborate on anything, I'd love to hear from you, and there's my contact details.
Thanks for sharing that information and telling us about the really innovative work that the University of Kent are doing, and how they're using the SensusAccess service. I think, as people have said this, your presentation really brought the whole service to life, the whole SensusAccess resource to life, and as Claire says, the power in our pockets with modern devices. Mary was asking a question. She asked if it was possible to find out more about the Opera project, and she wondered what research you're doing, and if indeed any of the work that you'll be doing will be published, Ben.
I think that almost certainly. I mean, we're about a year in, and an awful lot of it has been, you know, very practical. So we didn't really have an alternative format service as such before. We had kind of pockets of kind of practice. So we've been putting in guidance and practice, but we've done surveys of students to understand what they use, what they find difficult, how they experience the barriers. So I think there's an awful lot of research that we have done to inform the guidance that we're now producing, and I think we're starting to see some really important impacts of that, and some of the things have been very practical, but some of them have been very highly strategic. So we've embedded guidance into the module specification process at Kent, so that all new modules, when they're being considered for approval, have to reach some basic accessibility standards that we've described. So yeah, I think that there's if anyone wants to talk to me about it, please drop me an email, and I'd be very glad to have a conversation and talk about how we can possibly work together or share this. Or I'd be very happy to run another session in the future where we talk purely about what we've done in Opera, and perhaps Alistair could do that with me, because he's been crucial to it.
Thank you very much indeed, and I'm just going to post something to the text chat, which are some guides which we have produced, blogs mainly on accessible formats and accessible information that might be of help. I just want to offer a huge thanks to Jenny, to Lars, to Tanya and to Ben, and I'm now going to pass you back over to Claire Guthrie.
So thanks everyone. It's really been great and engaging to hear all those kind of different ideas coming together as we've done today. I'd really again just like to thank Margaret for being the driving force and organiser behind today's events. And thanks also to Sandy at CDN and for supporting this webinar, and George Glennie for his technical wizardry in bringing us all together today. If you'd like to become a member of the Assistive Technology Network, please email me on the address you can see now on screen, and you will have these presentations emailed to you if you want to get that noted down later. In terms of the Assistive Technology Network, our next steps are as follows. We have a steering group meeting in late November for the first time, so we're going to bring together a group of people to run forward with a number of different ideas we're having. So we're looking at creating a WordPress blog, a Twitter feed, and really pulling together as much information as we can to share with everyone. We have a face-to-face on the 23rd of January, which you can note in your diary at CDN in Stirling. Again, hopefully with a virtual connection for those that can't be there on the day, and there'll be regular posts on the JISC Mail forum, and hopefully more webinars as well coming soon. So if you've any ideas of anything you'd like to find out more about, please do email me on the address that's on screen now. So thanks very much.